All right, how's it going, everyone? Wanted to do a quick review of case head separation. I've had it happen to me twice, two separate occasions, and probably had, I don't know, 20 rounds with the case head separate. What that is the case head is down here, okay, on this part down here on this part of the brass, and essentially you can tell it's starting to happen, what they call incipient case head separation, when there's kind of a bright line down here, and the bright line either goes all the way around. Sometimes it's only 3/4, sometimes it's only half the way around, but it's a pretty bright line. And what I do is, if I see that bright line, I take a tool like this and I rub the bottom there to feel if there's like a bumpy ridge. And then I kind of go around, rotate the brass. Is there a ridge on any of the area of the brass down there? If I see a line and I feel a ridge, that tells me I have what's called incipient case head separation. It's about to separate. Okay. So what I had at that time was a chamber on these two rifles. It was the same gunsmith who chambered them too deep. Okay, so and that's one of the factors that causes this, and I'll go over the other three later. But the main factor, the one that causes it quite often, is the gunsmith will drill will ream your chamber too far in. Okay, and then what happens is so here's your chamber, and then your brass, goes in. And if it's too deep, you have a lot of space right here. So once you fire it, your case stretches excessively. Okay, so there'll be forces to kind of stretch it. I think pretty much in both directions. That'll stretch it out excessively. And what that does is that leaves this area here on the brass kind of thin. Okay, because the brass has to sort of migrate as it stretches. And so this area down here gets really thin. And when it gets really thin, you can see a bright line in it. And I apologize, I don't have any brass right now to show that to you, because I don't have any right now that have that issue. But when you see it, it's pretty obvious. And like I said, if you do see it, immediately check it with this. And if you feel a ridge in there, that's it. That I would throw away that brass. It's toast. Now, when I had these things separate on me, I think I noticed kind of a small line, but I wasn't worried, because I was like, well, I was kind of a rookie at that time. One was at a PRS match, and this was a long time ago, back when I used to shoot PRS matches. I don't anymore, because I just can't physically do it anymore. But and so I was like, I'll just load up a moderate load and go to the match. I should be fine. I'll get one more firing out of these. Well, I loaded the moderate load, went, and on the practice day on Friday, and I was shooting them fine. I was getting my dope and everything. I was making my final adjustments. And all of a sudden, it got really hot. I think it got up to like 80 degrees or something. And then I fired a few more, because I wanted to make sure my 1,200-yard dope was fine. And all of a sudden, boom, and it sounded kind of weird. Pulled the bolt up out, and all of a sudden, the case head was just kind of sitting there, on top of the, other bullets in the mag, and this part of the brass up here was stuck in the chamber. And I was like, oh shit, they separated. And so what I did is I pulled the bolt, removed the case head from the, it was kind of just sitting there on top of the other bullets in the mag, and then took a wire brush. It was a 6 Creed I was shooting. Took a wire brush, put it in, pulled it out. I think it was a 30 cal wire brush. Pulled the brass out. Anyway, after that, I took a few more shots. I let the barrel cool, because I thought maybe it's the barrel's too hot. I'll let it cool. Let it cool. Took another shot, and boom, it separated again. And I was like, shit. But I really wanted to get my 1,200 dope, because there was a stage, where I was going to have to take 5 shots at 1,200. So I went ahead and just fired a few more. They all separated. Anyway, and then I stopped. I was like, all right, I'm not going to play with fire here. The second time was an F-class scenario. I was on my belly, and same thing, it was like, well, I don't know if there's, case head separation going on here. and I'll just do a moderate load. Nope, it got hot in the day and the barrel was hot, and I got, a handful that's separate. I think I had to like continue to shoot the string. So I had like 10 of them separate or something. Anyway, now before you ask, like, oh my gosh, that's dangerous, da da da, did you have your action blow up on you? No, all the stuff I was using when that happened are all modern actions. I was talking to a couple smiths about it. They said, yeah, we see it happen all the time with like modern stuff and nothing blows up. You got these thick stainless steel barrels, you've got these rigid actions, and they're like, we don't usually see those blow up. What we see blow up are like these older, cheaper actions, thinner barrels. They see those blow up when case head separation happens. So anyway, regardless, my new practice is if I see that line, I definitely will check it. And if I feel a ridge, that brass is getting thrown away immediately. If I see the line and I check it and I don't feel a ridge, then I'm likely to continue using the brass, okay? But let's go over the other causes. So the first one is the chamber's cut too deep, and so you get an excessive amount of stretch, and that's why it's leading to this area of the brass right here stretching out and having a really thin layer of brass right here, which on the outside of the brass should look like a really bright line. The other one is you're resizing too much, okay? So the other one is, and I see this, people resizing in excess of 4 thousandths, like they're bumping their shoulder back 8 thousandths or 9 thousandths. For whatever reason, they didn't set their die up correctly, or they accidentally are using a different die for something, and they're bumping it way down. And so essentially what they're doing is they're kind of simulating this scenario where they're kind of now stretching it down too much, and then boom, when you fire it, stretching it out too much, so and causing the same thing, that kind of separation there. The other one that I see is this 2000 datum line, the diameter down here near the case head right here. If that is being expanded too much, like your chamber is more than 2 thousandths of an inch too wide for the brass you have, then you're getting a lot of stretching and then sizing, stretching, sizing, and that can cause a thinness here too and case head separation. So you want to make sure that your chamber is within a couple thousandths of your actual brass dimension there, so you're not sizing that area too much. Okay, and then the final one is just overuse of brass. So I have had brass where the chamber's cut perfectly. I'm not oversizing it. Down here at the 200 datum line, everything's going fine. But I have like, let's say 40 firings on something like this is like Norma PPC brass. I'll have like 40 firings on it. Stout firings, not just, moderate loads, but moderate and stout, most of them stout. Sometimes I start seeing cracking in the neck, and then I'll see the bright line at that point. Go in, take this, and then feel the ridge, and I'm like, all right, toss it. It's going in the trash. And then sometimes with moderate loads, I can get up to 60 firings, but again, it's just excessive wear for whatever reason can just make it get what's called incipient case head separation, where you see the bright line, you feel the ridge, and it's before it actually separates. And once I get that and I know, okay, I've just used the brass way too much, I throw it away. It's toast. So anyway, and then there's a couple things that I do to now that I do in my practice to sort of catch whether case head separation may become an issue in the near future. The first thing is after I'm done fire forming, which could be either 2 stout loads, I just shoot 2 stout loads and I feel confident that, like let's say 6 PPC, for example, it's fully formed. I throw it in my case gauge, okay? And if it goes in pretty good and it's looking pretty flush here with the top, and I go throw this on and it's, oh, okay, cool, it's only like plus 3 thousandths or something, or plus 2.5 thousandths. That tells me, okay, it's not stretching out excessively. But if I throw it in there after I, do my fire form and I see it kind of protruding outside like that much, I'm probably going to be like, whoa, that's a little bit much. And then if I throw that puppy on and I see it's out to like 7-8 thousandths, then I'm going to start suspecting that the chamber is cut too deep, okay? But one thing, here's the deal with these case gauges though. If your 200 line is blown out and it's diametrically too large, that can cause your case head to kind of stick up in a case gauge. So I don't just stop there. Then what I do is I will get this type of headspace gauge. Like in this case, this is a Harles. If you ever, Harles is in, I think they're in Virginia, the East Coast there. If you ever get a die from them, they always send you a headspace gauge with it. And roughly a 450 thousandths of an inch of that gauge is taken up until you actually get it to touch the headspace. So what you do is you set your calipers at a negative 45 or 4,500 45. I'm sorry, God, what am I saying? You know what I mean. Look at that number. Gosh, it's been too long of a day. And that way, when you measure it, you're measuring the actual headspace. So. Okay, there. So it's kind of in snug. Make sure it's kind of snug and not loose. Okay, so what's my number here? Let me see if I can fuddle these numbers up. 1.4, 1.1, look at that, almost 1.1460, okay? So then what I do is I look at the reamer spec, look at the reamer, and for headspace, the minimum is 1.145. And the max is 1.15. Okay, so now I'm within the minimum and the max spec, okay? So that tells me that it should be fine. In fact, I'm closer to the minimum than to the maximum here. So that tells me, you know, I'm doing really, really good here. So the well, 1.1455 maybe. Well, whatever, half a thousandths. So that tells me like, no, I'm not excessively stretching it out, okay? That readout with this type of case gauge micrometer could have been just the datum line being blown out, in which case, then what do? I'll grab my micrometer here, and I'll see how far out is that thing, and then I'll test from a baseline piece of brass to this one and see, you know, how far out is that, to see if it is getting blown out excessively. Anyway, so that's kind of how I do my initial stuff. Just check it with like a case gauge micrometer. Now, you don't have to check it with a case gauge micrometer. It's just something I do as a quick first step. You can go right to something like this where you're actually measuring the headspace and then checking it in accordance to the reamer spec. And that'll kind of tell you, am I getting excessive stretching, okay? And then the other thing, of course, always check your bump on, you know, and so what I do, I actually take this thing with me to matches. I have it sitting on my loading bench. I will check my bump all the time. So, you know, what I'll do is after, you know, if I have some fired brass, I'll check, you know, 5 of them real quick. And okay, it looks like it's checking out at, you know, 1.5 plus 1.5 on the gauge. And then I bump one, and then I throw it in there, and I go, okay, oh, look, 0. Okay, perfectly. It's sizing at 1.5 thousandths. This is exactly how much I want it sized, you know. And then I'll bump another one, pop it in, and go, okay, it's, you know, negative 0.5. All right, it sized this one 2 thousandths. So I'm looking for anything within 1.5 to 2 thousandths bump, okay? And so, like, that's how I check for, you know, factor number 2. You know, I just kind of check, make sure I'm not excessively bumping them, all right? And then in terms of excessive reloads, what I do is I just take a lot of notes about how many times I've shot that brass, okay? So like if you look in any of my data books, you're always gonna see a running tally of the round count. And then you're also gonna see descriptors of the type of brass that I used, okay? And so it'll say like, you know, okay, Lapua, next turn to this, my Aztec code, how I need to bump it, what die I have set to bump what. And then what I do is if I look in here and I go, okay, you know, I have 90 pieces of brass and I'm at 691 firings, you know, I'll just do the calculations and go, okay, you know, I'm on, you know, 6 firings right now for this brass. Okay, and then when let's say I get to 10 and the brass is showing some signs of major wear and tear, or I get to 30 and there's whatever it may be, I'll put in my data book, you know, threw away, you know, brass showed signs of this, and that, and I threw it away, you know, and then I have notes, and then I restarted with a new set of brass, lot number this, Aztec code that, da da da, and that way I can look and go, okay, I've gone through one set of brass with this barrel, I'm starting another. I make sure I track, you know, pretty much like how many firings I have on the brass. So if I get to like, you know, if I'm at 55, then I start paying more attention. Like, okay, I better keep a close eye on this brass because some serious signs of wear and tear are probably about to happen. And I got to be pretty vigilant watching it. That way, you know, when I start seeing these signs of serious brass wear, I just throw it away. So there you go. That's all I have for you on this topic at this point. Yeah, let me know your experience with it. Maybe our experiences are similar or very different. I don't know, but that's been my experience with it. Sorry, again, I don't have a case that actually shows the line, but it's a pretty obvious, bright line that's down there, you know, down there near the case head. So it should be pretty obvious, like a bright line. Sometimes your sizing die makes a small line. And so that's why, like, you know, if I run this down there and I don't feel a ridge, I might just keep using the brass because it could just be the die that's creating a small little line in that area. The bright line, though, seems a little more distinctive. It seems a little more obvious. And then, of course, when I run this in there, I feel a ridge. Then I know for sure it's about to separate. So, and then just throw away. Don't even waste your time. Take your notes, though. Say, you know, this brass lasted 32 firings before it, you know, showed signs of incipient case head separation. That way you have a rough estimate, you know, if you got several more boxes of that lot of brass, you have an estimate of, you know, sort of how long it should last for you. And you'll kind of be able to plan accordingly. All right, everyone, take it easy. We'll see you.